I've been waiting way too long. Yeah, I've been down here trying to get it. Yeah, I've been waiting way too long.
All right, this is the video for Unit 3, Lesson 8 on transformations, specifically linear transformations. There are three major types of transformations. There's a translation, which is a slide. This is when the y-intercept changes. There is also a rotation, which is when the slope changes. And then there is a reflection, which is very specific, and it is when the slope is multiplied by -1. So we're going to look at some examples of transformations, and it's possible to have more than one transformation when you're looking at a couple different functions. So we'll notice that as well. The first function we have is f of x. And f of x equals x is called the parent function. This is where all linear functions get their start. The slope of f of x equals x is 1, and the y-intercept is 0. So I'm going to graph that on the coordinate plane, starting at 0, moving up 1 over 1. I can also move down 1 over 1. Always making sure that my slope is going in the right direction. That is a positive slope. So we're going to look at these other functions in relation to the parent function and talk about the transformations that are happening. So our next function is g of x equals x plus 6. G would be the name of the function. Remember, g of x just represents y, but the name of the function is g. So the slope of this function is 1, and the y-intercept is 6. So on my graph, I'm going to start on the y-axis at positive 6, and I'm going to go up 1 over 1. Or I can also go down 1 over 1 to the left. Again, making sure it's a positive slope. You should notice that these lines are parallel because they have the same slope. Speaking of g of x and f of x, we learned that just recently. And so this g of x is a transformation of f of x. Specifically, it is a translation. This function has been translated 6 units up from f of x. Next, we're going to look at h of x equals 2x minus 3. The slope of this function is 2. The y-intercept is -3, so I'm going to start at -3 on the y-axis. And I'm going to move up 2 over 1. I'm going to continue that. I can also move down 2 over 1 to the left. Again, just making sure that the slope is going in the right direction. Also, don't forget that if the slope is a whole number, that the rise is that number and the run is 1. So the transformation of h of x from f of x, well, the slope changed and so did the y-intercept. So because the slope changed, that is a rotation. And you don't need to be specific about the rotation. You just need to identify that it is a rotation, but also the function was translated 3 units down from the parent function f of x equals x from 0 to -3. So again, as you can see, there are multiple transformations happening from f of x to h of x, which is totally fine. All right, lastly, we're going to look at k of x equals -x plus 4. The slope is -1. The y-intercept is 4. So I'm going to start on the y-axis at 4, and I'm going to move down 1 over 1, or up 1 and to the left 1. This line has a negative slope, so I want to make sure that my line is falling from left to right. So what's happening between f of x and k of x? The slope is negative, and so the slope was multiplied by -1. The original slope in f of x is 1. The new slope is -1, and so that is a reflection. Also, the function was translated up 4 units from the parent function. So you can see here that there are lots of different transformations that can happen. Again, we'll always compare a function to the parent function unless it asks us otherwise. And if it asks us to compare between 2 specific functions, we can do that. For instance, between g of x and h of x, that would be a rotation and a translation. The translation would actually be 9 units down. From 6 to -3 is down 9 units. And again, the rotation is because the slope of g of x is 1, the slope of h of x is 2. And so when the slope changes like that, that is a rotation. Make sure you know the difference between rotation and reflection. Reflection is very specific. And so just make sure you pay attention to that.